Hey guys, and welcome back to another math video. Today's topic is going to be circles and specifically circumference and area, but I will get into some other fundamental parts of circles that you should know. I don't have any key tips today, simply because I thought it would be easier if I just show you what a circle is and the different parts of the circles and the formulas and stuff like that. And I also assume that some of you at least have encountered circles before, like in math class. But I'm just trying to give you like the basic fundamentals so that you can approach any SHSAT problem. Okay, so the first thing we have to know about circles is that they have a center point, let's say roughly like there, and we call that the center. We usually denote that as C. So like in a diagram, you might see this as C. Now, the other thing we can talk about is the perimeter of a circle. The perimeter of a circle, right, this outer edge here, is actually known as the diameter, as the circumference. And the circumference is just another name for the perimeter, but it's specifically for circles. So this part here that surrounds it is known as a circumference, and we have a formula here that we'll get to in a minute. But as you can see here, circumference equals perimeter, and then we have two different ways of expressing that, of like the formula for the perimeter. But now, if we know that the center is in the middle of the circle, then we know that this distance, which is known as the radius, will always be equal, right? So this distance, for example, will be equal to that distance, which will be equal to that distance, right? Because if you draw a straight line from a point that's in the middle of the circle to the perimeter, to the circumference, the lines will all be equal in length, right? So any line drawn from the circumference to the center is equal to another one and is the radius. Now, for example, one way they can input like triangles into circle questions is by giving you a triangle inscribed like this, right, in a circle. Now, because this is at the center and these two are at the edge, you know that these two are equal because they are both equal to R, right? So just by this, they give you information about the triangle just by saying that it's inside of a circle, right? Because now you know that it's an isosceles triangle where these two sides are equal and these two angles also are equal. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of mix the different shapes and geometry together. Okay, so that's the circumference and radius. So now let me talk about the diameter. The diameter is simply 2 radii. So the diameter is the distance from one edge of the circle to the other edge. The only requirement is that it has to go through the center. So for example, that would be a diameter. That would be a diameter. And we know that that's just equal to 2 radius, right? Because this is 1 r, and then this is another r. So diameter is equal to 2r. Okay, so now let me talk about the formulas we use, which are for area and circumference. So both of them have something called pi, which is this thing right here. And pi is basically the ratio of the circumference to the diameter. That's what pi is. You don't need to know how that, we derived that and stuff. All you need to know is what its value is, and just that it is related to circles. So pi, it can be approximated like when you're doing calculations, because pi is a never-ending digit, right? It's 3.1415 and it goes on forever, right? But to approximate it, you can just use 22 over 7, which is roughly equal to 3.1415. So that's pi. And now that we know what pi is, which is just, a special constant. It's not a variable, it's a constant. We have these two formulas, 2 pi r and d pi for circumference. Now, these are kind of the same formula, right? Because we said that d is 2r, so this is basically just rewriting this in terms of d, right? But basically what this is saying is you take the radius, you multiply it by 2, and then you multiply it by pi, and that's how you get the circumference. Yeah, and now for area, it's pi r squared. So for the area, you take the radius, you square it, and then you multiply by pi. And that's how we find the area and circumference. And there's a lot of different ways in which these can be incorporated. So they're never going to ask you, like, what is the area of the circle, right? Because that would be too easy of a question. But they could, like, give you a triangle inscribed in a circle, or a circle in another circle, or all sorts of different things, which would require you to use these formulas to get to the right answer. But this is everything you have to know about circles. This is the basics. I guess the only other thing is that obviously this is 360 degrees, right? Because it's a 360. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so now we're going to do 2 practice problems just to, check our understanding. Okay, a large circular dinner plate has a radius of 20 centimeters. A smaller circular dinner plate with a circumference of 20 pi centimeters is placed in the center of the larger dinner plate. What is the area of the part of the larger dinner plate that is not covered by the smaller plate? Okay, so the first thing, I'm just going to highlight some stuff here, or underline, sorry. Circumference of 20 centimeters, right? So they're telling us the circumference of something is 20 pi centimeters. So what's our formula for circumference? It's 2 pi r, which is equal to d pi, right? Now, if they've told us that the circumference is 20 pi centimeters, then we can put that in. So 20 pi equals 2 pi r, right? And look at that. Now, we can solve for r. So first we can just cross out the pi's, right? So we get 2r equals 20. Now we have to divide both sides by 2, so we get r equals 10. So now we know that the radius of the smaller circular plate is 10, right? So now let's draw out a little diagram. Okay, and excuse me for my not perfect circles, but that's the big dinner plate, and that's gonna be the smaller dinner plate. That seems roughly right. We have the center, and we know that this radius is gonna be 10, right? Because that's the radius of the smaller dinner plate. Now, it tells us that the radius of the larger dinner plate is 20. Okay, so this wasn't drawn to scale, but just assume that was 20, right? And now they're asking, what is the area of the larger dinner plate that's not covered? So they just want this area outside, right? So what's one way we can do this? Well, we can find the area of the big thing, right, of the entire thing, and then just subtract the area of the small thing to figure out how much isn't covered by that. So that's what we're gonna do. So we're gonna do pi r squared of the big one, right? So we're gonna say big minus pi r squared small, right? So that's what we have to do. So now the pi, right, is a constant. R of the big one is 20 pi r squared, right? Minus pi of the small one, which is the same thing, times r squared. R is 10, right? So what's 20 squared? Well, 20 squared is 400, but you can just multiply. So you get 400 pi. That's the area of the big plate, but now we have to subtract this part to get the outside. 10 squared is 100, so minus 100 pi, and then 400 pi minus 100 pi equals 300 pi, which is answer choice H. Okay, now let's move on to our next question. In the quarter circle above, what is y in terms of x? Okay, so there is a lot of information here, and I can already tell you that some of it is redundant, but you need to remember something. They've told you that it's a circle. If this is a quarter circle, right, this is our circumference, and these are both radii, right? These 3 are radii. So that means that these 3 must be equal to each other. So they're asking for what is y in terms of x. Well, we know x plus 1 must equal y plus 2, right? This distance here, because they are both the radii and therefore equal. So to solve for y in terms of x, all we have to do is isolate y here. So we subtract 2 from both sides. So y equals x, and then plus 1 minus 2 minus 1. So that is the answer. Very straightforward. So yeah, you see how they kind of incorporate different shapes and different things to try and complicate it, but at the end of the day, you are still using those basic skills. You just have to figure out how to use them correctly. Okay, so that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this helpful, please, like, subscribe, share, comment if you have any questions, and of course, feel free to email us. And we hope to see you here next week.